What are apprenticeships? Apprenticeships are a real job with real responsibilities. So you are employed. You're employed like anybody else within that company that you're working for. So that means you're entitled to things such as holiday pay, etc. As well as having an employer, you also have somebody called a learning or training provider, and their role is to get you your qualification. So your employer's role is to give you the skills and knowledge to do the job, and your learning provider is to give you your qualification. You'll work for at least 30 hours a week, but most apprentices seem to work between 37 and 40 hours a week. You will earn a wage, and I will talk about that on the next slide. But I do think it's important to remember that it is a real job with real responsibilities, and therefore it's not just work experience. It's not an easy route, but it is a really rewarding route. Okay, slide's gone a bit funny there. However, that first tile should say earn a salary. So yeah, you do earn a salary, and there is a national minimum wage for apprentices, which is £4.15 per hour. That is slightly less than the national minimum wage for the rest of the working population. But what that does is reflects the fact that you are probably starting your job from scratch with no skills or knowledge to start from. Your wage will go up incrementally, and obviously once you're qualified, you'll be entitled to earn whatever the going rate is for the particular role that you've trained in. A lot of apprenticeship providers do pay more than the national minimum wage for apprentices, but you can't expect to earn more. There used to be, it used to be quite common that once you'd completed your apprenticeship, then your employer would let you go and maybe take on a new apprentice. That's not very true anymore. In fact, 90% of all apprentices stay on in with their employer once they've completed their apprenticeship. And what we know about that 10% that don't, the majority leave because they're moving on to a different employer, usually for a promotion or to use their skills somewhere else. So it's a really great opportunity to get your foot on the ladder of a career. You can gain a degree via an apprenticeship, and I will talk about that in a little while. I think a lot of people worry that as a young person that you might not be able to socialise with other young people if you're going into the workplace. Now, quite a lot of larger companies employ more than one apprentice, so chances are you will be working with people your own age. But you can also join something called the Young Apprenticeship Ambassadors Scheme, where you'd get to socialise and meet with lots of young people. Okay, I'll move on. So there are different ways of doing your study for your apprenticeship. 20% of your paid time is what we call off-the-job learning. Now, traditionally, that might mean that you go to a college or a learning or training provider one day a week, and you stay in your employer with your employer for the other 4 days. Some larger companies have assessors come into the workplace, so they will come to you. And more often people are doing their learning online, and especially at the moment a lot of your learning is done online in your own time or with your employer, so you don't actually need to go anywhere else. But yeah, 20% of your time as an apprentice is spent doing the learning element. So what kind of things can you do as an apprentice? Well, this is a broad overview of the kinds of things you can do as an apprentice. Traditionally, people have thought maybe about hairdressing, carpentry, building, that kind of thing. And you know, there are some fantastic opportunities out there within those sectors, but more and more sectors are opening up to the apprenticeship route. And that includes aviation, horticulture, architecture, cybersecurity, journalism, nursing, those kind of things. So some great opportunities. And also obviously opportunities within the marine and maritime section, which I will talk about later on. So who offers apprenticeships? Well, 50% of all apprenticeships offered by large national or international companies, companies that you've probably heard of. So, for example, Airbus, IBM, BAE Systems, all large local employers to Portsmouth anyway. So that's 50% of them, which means there's another 50%. And those apprenticeships are offered by what we would call small or medium sized companies. So companies you may not have heard of who are probably more local to where you live. And I think it's really important to remember, if you're serious about getting an apprenticeship, don't just think, oh, I've heard of that company, they must be the best ones to go to. Do explore all the options, because there are some fantastic opportunities being offered by small local employers. Another thing to think about is that especially larger companies tend to offer more than one kind of apprenticeship. So, for example, somebody like BAE, they won't just be offering engineering apprenticeships, they offer a whole range of apprenticeships. A lot of large companies have roles in all of these roles that are on the screen here, and chances are they will offer them via an apprenticeship route. So if there is a particular role that you're interested in, it's worth exploring larger companies to see what kind of things they offer. I'll just focus in now on the levels of apprenticeships. So we now have 4 levels. The first level is level 2, which is intermediate, which is the equivalent of GCSEs. Level 3 is the advanced level apprenticeship, which is the equivalent of A-levels. Level 4 is the equivalent of a HNC, so that's a higher national certificate. Level 5 is the equivalent of a HND, which is a higher national diploma. Level 6 is the equivalent of, well, is a degree, and level 7 is a master's degree. So you could potentially start your apprenticeship at a level 2 and then work your way all the way up to gaining a master's degree. Sometimes these levels can be a little bit confusing. So, for example, you may complete your GCSEs and start an apprenticeship that is actually a level 2 apprenticeship. You don't automatically go on to an advanced level. Some apprenticeships are just offered at a level 2, and sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. It is really important to remember that apprenticeship providers and employers are looking for people with good qualifications. So please don't think that apprenticeships is all you do if you don't get your GCSEs. A lot of apprenticeship providers and employers want people to have worked hard and definitely to try and get your English and maths. So if I focus in now on higher and degree apprenticeships, over 100 universities across England offer degree apprenticeships now, and that includes in Hampshire all of our local ones. A degree apprenticeship is the same as any other apprenticeship, so you're employed from day one with your employer and you're studying part-time alongside that. And you're studying for a degree. And it's exactly the same degree as somebody would be studying for if they were going to university full-time. Because you're working alongside that, it does tend to take about a year longer to gain your degree. So you could be doing your apprenticeship for somewhere between 4 and 6 years. But what that gives you is between 4 and 6 years work experience on top of gaining the degree. And what we hear is that the graduate job market is saturated, so there are more graduates than there are graduate level jobs. And for an employer maybe to get your CV or to get the CV of somebody who's just been to university, that you're going to have a real competitive edge, as well as the same degree having 4 to 6 years work experience. And I think that's something really worth considering. The other thing to think about is that you're employed, so you're getting paid. And your employer and or the government will be paying your university fees. So doing a degree apprenticeship means that you don't build up that perceived debt that people who go to university full-time do. So you're not getting the debt and you're getting paid on top of that. And most degree level apprenticeships pay a lot more than the national minimum wage for apprentices. So are there any jobs out there? I think it's really important to acknowledge at the moment there are less apprenticeships available. If I was doing this presentation in October last year, there would have been a lot more vacancies out there, but there are vacancies out there. Today I've done a search in a radius around a Portsmouth postcode, and so within 5 miles of a Portsmouth postcode at the moment there are 29 vacancies. And if you go 20 miles, there are 241 vacancies. So, you know, it's clear there are apprenticeships out there, and the government are putting in incentives for employers to encourage them to offer apprenticeships and to offer opportunities to young people. It is definitely important that if you're serious about gaining an apprenticeship, that you do put a lot of effort into searching for an apprenticeship, and I'll talk about how you do that in a little while. So just really quickly to focus in on the kinds of apprenticeships that you can do within the marine and maritime sector. You can get apprenticeships within marinas and boats. The Merchant Navy have some fantastic apprenticeships. You could work within the ports, marine surveying. Obviously, the Royal Navy has a huge range of roles, and they would be considered apprenticeships. And also inland waterways. So there's a huge range of opportunities specific to the marine and maritime sector. And you can go onto their particular information websites, and you can find more out about the types of apprenticeships that you can do within each of those individual sectors. So how do you find an apprenticeship? Well, the main website is findanapprenticeship.gov.uk, and the first thing you need to do is go onto there and register your details. And what that means is obviously put in your postcode, where you live, how far you'd be willing to travel for work, the kind of level of apprenticeship you're interested in, and obviously the sector that you're interested in. And then every time a new apprenticeship that is put online, and it is a live website, so new ones come on all the time. And so anytime something that matches your search comes on, you will get an email alert to say, new jobs come on, you might be interested in having a look, go and have a look and apply. So it's a really, really useful website to use. But that's not the only place to look for apprenticeships. So general job sites like Indeed will also have apprenticeships, and most companies will now put any vacancies they have on their website and share them within social media. We also know that many apprentices still get their apprenticeships through friends and family. So if there's a particular role you're interested in, then make sure you tell people, because word of mouth, somebody might know somebody who works within that area who might know about an apprenticeship. You can go to the Vacancy Snapshot website. They've got tons of information on there. They've got lots of brilliant video clips of employers, particularly apprenticeship providers, talking about what they're looking for in an apprentice. And they've also got lots of information from current apprentices talking about what it's like to be an apprentice, tips on how to apply, fill in an application form, get through interviews, that kind of thing. So it's a really useful website. So you can contact us at the National Apprenticeship Service. You can call us, or you can follow us on social media. And we have lots more information on the amazing apprenticeship. That's information for students, for parents, and for teachers. Does anybody have any questions?
No, Emma, there's no questions in the chat at the moment. I was just going to say thank you for talking about the recent incentives from the government. I think it's really key for employers to understand the help that is out there in taking on new apprentices, and also worth mentioning the impact of COVID-19. You know, it has had an impact on the number of apprenticeships available, but I think it's fabulous that there are some out there. And as you showed earlier, obviously there's quite a few in the Solent area as well.
Yes.
So, yes, so feel free, I will monitor the questions, but feel free to keep talking all things apprenticeships.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's the end of the official presentation, yeah, I suppose my tips around applying for apprenticeships is make sure you search on as wide a radius as you can, because you know, not every apprenticeship is going to be available on your doorstep. But if you are interested in a particular apprenticeship, so you may have to travel. Some great tips for what to put on an application form. So the Vacancy Snapshot website and Amazing Apprenticeship websites have got some really good videos talking about that, of apprentices saying what they're looking for, and employers saying what they're looking for. I think it's important as a young person that you don't necessarily worry that you haven't got lots and lots of work experience, when you're trying to put on an application form for an apprenticeship, think about how you can demonstrate your skills, maybe things you've done voluntarily or things you've done within your family to help them. You know, employers like to see people being able to talk about how they've worked within a team, what they think their main skills are. So leadership skills, communication skills are always really high with employers. Whatever the job is that you're going for, it's really important to be able to talk and also to listen to people and take instruction. The other thing I'd say about apprenticeships is, you know, don't be put off by a potentially low starting wage, because, you know, wages do go up, and all that experience that you're gaining is going to make you very employable if and when you want to move on to another employer and look for a promotion. So I guess those would be the main things I would say about apprenticeships. Nikki, I don't know if you can think of anything that I've missed that might be worth me talking about.
No, I was going to add that I think employers these days really are looking at those transferable softer skills. I think a lot of apprenticeships, and especially young people when they're applying, you know, they realise that perhaps they don't have the work experience and they wonder what to put on an application form. So I think it's really key to put on there, you know, times when you have taken the role or times when you have acted as a leader in a situation, for example, just to show that you have some skills. Also, if you haven't actually got any work experience, it's worth putting on any hobbies that you've got, because quite often that gives the employer something to strike up a conversation with you over. It may be something that you feel is quite insignificant, but to an employer, it might show that you've got determination or perseverance, or you've got leadership skills that perhaps you haven't highlighted on your application somewhere else. And I know that if you apply to a particular employer, for example, 1 year and you don't get in, it's always worth asking for feedback on why you haven't been successful in your apprenticeship, because you could be successful if you reapply in a second year, for example. And I think that apprenticeships are so valuable now. It is a fantastic way to earn a living, but also get a qualification. And you can always start with a lower apprenticeship and then move up through different grades and get higher and higher qualifications. So really fabulous opportunities, and we have some amazing employers here in the Solent region particularly who offer some fantastic apprenticeship opportunities.
Definitely. And I think something maybe I can just add about your application process. It's really important to start looking at apprenticeships now. Some of our larger employers will be opening up their apprenticeship recruitment windows now or just at the beginning of next month. And it's a long process to get you employed, ready for maybe June or July next year. So those larger ones, like for example, BAE, they will, and their interview process won't just be meeting somebody for an interview, which is what you might traditionally think an interview's like. You know, there are chances are there'll be a telephone interview, there'll be something called a psychometric test, where you'll be asked different questions. You might have to do a timed sort of question type test that you will do online. So it's a process, a selection process. Some employers will invite you in for a group interview. I mean, at the moment, those kind of interviews aren't happening, but it could be an online group interview. Employers like to observe how you interact with other people and with existing employees. So if you are ever invited in for an interview that could be a group interview, make sure you're on it right from the beginning, from the first person you see, from the moment you walk in the door. You're being interviewed, but maybe they're not asking you questions in a formal way. So I would say the interview process is really worth thinking about. And on those websites I've talked about, they will talk to you about, there'll be videos about how to do well in those kinds of things. And the other thing to say is that maybe our smaller apprenticeship providers and employers, they tend to start putting their apprenticeship vacancies on from February onwards. So the larger ones recruit now, and smaller, more local employers recruit nearer the time of you leaving school or college. And that's why you need to register now and keep looking for opportunities, because there's sort of there's not like one intake like there would be with college or with universities. I hope that helps, Nikki.
Yes, it does. Thank you. And one thing that I would just add is, as you mentioned, some of the larger employees do have a sort of 4 or 5 stage process, which can seem quite daunting. And I think it's a process that a lot of young people haven't actually ever experienced until they do it for the very first time. So it can be quite scary. And I think if you get the chance to, please, please, please practice. Not only practice having an online interview, perhaps with your family, doing a sort of Zoom call from one room to another, but also practice trying to do questions under pressure. There is nothing more off-putting than knowing you've got 30 minutes to answer 15 questions, and instead of focusing on the question that you're trying to answer, people end up focusing on watching the timer counting down in the top of the screen. So my biggest takeaway from today is practice, make sure you come across really well, dress smartly, and look at the camera when you're talking. So I think there's no more questions for Emma, so I think we're going to wrap it up there today. Emma, thank you so much for giving a really clear insight into Ask Apprenticeships across the UK. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nikki. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.